I'm Eric Estrada, and this is my go-to fly for shallow water and thick grass.
You got it. Nice, Eric. Oh, that's a nice one.
Fights pretty good on light tackle.
How sick was that?
So I'm gonna start it off with a B10S Stinger in a size 2. You'll see me use this on most of my flies. It's one of my favorite hooks. It's very sticky, it's strong, it's thin wire, so it penetrates very easily compared to like a dull, thicker hook. So usually always gets the job done. I like to use black thread for this very fly and a lot of my other flies too. So go ahead and start up my base wrap. Start rolling it forward, then back. This is gonna allow all the materials to stick to the hook shank. Trim that off. Come back over the cutoff end and it just like seals it all in there. So for the tail, I'm gonna use some olive fin raccoon. This stuff is very difficult to get. So whenever you find it at a fly shop, make sure you scoop most of it up. I got this at JD Outdoor Adventures in Miami, one of my favorite shops. So you wanna get a decent amount of fibers of material off of the hide. Cut that off. This particular fin raccoon is pretty long. So I don't want this fly to be too large overall. So I trim it down as necessary off the back end so that the tail end flows naturally and it's not just like an abrupt cut. And I like using natural fibers that just have better action in the water. And this fin raccoon, which is very hard to find, does very well in terms of action. It doesn't tangle up like some of the other materials do, which is why I love this material. So you're gonna go ahead and tie that on. Once I have that on there, I'm gonna run the thread right back. Then I flip it over because now I'm gonna tie on one strand of gold flash and then fold it on back so it comes out like, essentially it's like a little shrimp, you know, those little antennas they have. That's what this gold flash is gonna act as. So again, it's one single strand of gold flash, doubled over. So I'm gonna run it parallel to the hook shank. Tie it on dead center, stick it out the other side, and then wrap over it and secure that to the hook. Then I'm gonna flip it back over. Now I will get the silly legs. I'm using these fly enhancer legs. You'll hear me refer to them as silly legs. This is from Hairline Dubbing. They call it the orange, pumpkin, and yellow. I love this coloration. It looks a lot like a crustacean that you'd find in the grass. Add some depth to the fly and movement. Even when you're not stripping it, the silly legs just start dancing. So I'm gonna go ahead and tie 2 of them on here. And same thing, but on top of the hook shank now instead of on the side. Gonna put them where I want. And this is gonna be on the top of the hook shank because it acts as a little shrimp legs once it's folded over. So got a couple of wraps on it. Now I fold it back. Wrap that a few times. And if you see, it's 4 legs sticking out the bottom now. I'll trim it up at the end to the proper length, but you see this is starting to look like a little shrimp fly, which works very well in the grass flats. So now I'm gonna go ahead and run the thread back forward. And I'm gonna tie on the dumbbell eyes right now. So I actually have 2 versions of this fly. This one was a size 2 hook, and I'll use a dumbbell eye that's black with the yellow paint on the side. I also tie this with large black bead chain eyes and a size 4 hook. if I'm fishing shallower water and spookier fish. Now I've built up a little mound with thread where I want the eyes to sit. And I'm just gonna go ahead and figure 8 them on. So I do 7 to 8 turns in one direction, then 7 to 8 turns in the opposite direction. Now that I've got it figure 8'd on, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it around both, about 7 times. Then I go over the shank, under the eye, over the shank, under the eye, and that just kind of just cinches the eyes on there. So now I got the eyes on here. I got the legs, I got the tails, I got the little antennas. I'm gonna go ahead and tie on my weed guard. I highly recommend tying a weed guard on this fly. This fly is meant to be fished in the grass, so you will get snagged up. So for weed guards, I always use Hard Mason 16 pound. It is a very stiff line, so it allows me to tie a stiff weed guard and not have something super thick on there that's gonna affect the way the fly swims. So the way that I do it, I learned this method a long time ago. Essentially, you just want to fold it over on itself. So it creates this little U. Put it right here, go over the front of it 4 times. And then you pull it down. Then you go over the back of it a few more times. And there you have it. That's how you tie the weed guard on. And don't worry about it, I'm gonna adjust it and trim it in a minute once I'm done tying the fly. But now I'm ready for the body. So for the body, I'm gonna go ahead and use this minnow head. It's like a tan, copper, and gold flash mixed in. And I'm gonna go ahead and build this up. While it is minnow head, I'm not gonna use it for a minnow head body style. Essentially, I'm gonna do the same thing but sideways and try to build and create, you know, the profile of a little shrimp or a crab. And again, this fly will work as a shrimp or crab for those fish that feed in shallow water on crustaceans. So I'm gonna go ahead and tie this on. Work my thread up to the back of the eyes, and then I'm start palmering this forward, and as I spin it, I start brushing the fibers back with my other hand to really fill it in. I want to make sure I'm not like just rolling over itself. Get a nice little body going here. And I've been surprised, I've caught a lot of bonefish on this very fly. Some would think that it's too flashy with all this gold and copper flash on this step, but it's worked very well. You know, these fish are just pouncing on it. As you can see in a few of my videos, you'll see me catching bones on this fly. Maybe these bonefish in Miami are just very aggressive, but they're freaking loving this fly pattern. So now I've worked my way all the way up to the eyes. I'm gonna go ahead and get a few wraps on this end to cinch it down. I like to get about 4 wraps. Then I cut the metal wire. I use my bad scissors to cut the metal wire because I don't want to dull up my good ones. Everyone's got good scissors and bad scissors, or at least everyone I know that ties flies. And you get a few more wraps to cinch that down. Bring this over to the front side now. In front of the weed guard. Build up a nice little base to go ahead and end it with a quick whip finish. I like to do 2 whip finishes. I do use the tool. I know a bunch of guys don't, but I learned how to do it with the tool, and I just bought a bunch of them back then, so never had an issue with it. never had a need to go ahead and learn how to do it without it. Before I used to use a whip finish, I used to just do 2 half hitches on top of each other, and that got the job done as well. So now what I do is kind of pull it apart to the sides, the middle head material. I want to go ahead and shape it. And the way I want to shape this is kind of like a cone. I want the top flat because that's going to make it want to ride hook shank up, because there's not a lot of material on there. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that down. Because what ends up happening is the more material, it wants to float. So if I have less material on the bottom, it'll make the fly ride hook shank up, which is what you want. So again, I'm gonna trim that down. Kind of want to shape it, kind of like a merkin, or some of those classic crab flies that we all know and love. I want to leave it a little bit longer towards the back. So again, it's flat on the bottom, which is technically it's the top, but when it's riding hook shank up, when you're fishing it, this will be the bottom, right nice and flat. The top, I kind of taper it up towards the hook, and I kind of do the same on the sides. Again, I just want to build that I don't know, almost like a cone, like a connular, I don't know what you would say, shape that just push water. Then I'm gonna trim the city legs down a bit to about the length of the fly overall. Same for that gold flash. And then for the weed guard, I like to take this moment to kind of, straighten it out where I want it. And I like to make it just a little bit longer than the shank of the hook. So I bring it towards the hook, just cut it a tiny bit longer. That just ensures that any grass just rolls right over the hook. So this is the first one I've tied in a while. It looks like it's a little hollow in the middle, but that's not an issue. It'll still fish very well. I'm gonna go ahead and tie a few more off camera, and I will show proper proportion. So again, usually when I tie one, I haven't tied a fly pattern in a while. It's kind of like we're remembering how to do it. Tie 2 or 3. Usually by the time you get to the 3rd one, you've dialed in your proportions and your trimming gets a lot nicer. And you end up with a better final product. So this fly will still catch plenty of fish, but I'm gonna tie up a few more, show you how much better it's gotten from the first one to the 3rd of the batch. There you have it. This is my go-to redfish fly. It works very well for bonefish, redfish, snook, tarpon, pretty much anything in shallow water where there's a lot of thick turtle grass and those little sandy patches that are just kind of open. If you throw this into the grass and work it from the grass into the patch, you're gonna get a lot of fish, whether it's a snook sitting in a pothole or a bonefish cruising the edge of a sandbar.
Get it, got me a bone.
They see this thing come out of the turtle grass, they're gonna eat it. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Stay tuned and stick around for more fly time videos.
He saw me. That's that signature bonefish run. Saw him coming right down that same line as the barracuda and those previous 2 bonefish. I led this one about 15 feet. The moment he saw the fly, he darted straight at it.